The dust has almost settled on election 2023 and we will have a new government soonish. But what role did the online strategy of each party play in the result? Here to perform an online election autopsy is digital editor Finn Hogan. Finn, morena.
Good morning, Simon.
What can you tell us?
Yes, well, as you say, we've almost made it through this cycle. But if we do take a little bit of a look back in the lead up to the election and just the period after, if we look at our top 10, we're looking at Luxon, Seymour and Peters just really consistently holding into those top 3 spots online, which was a fairly good metric for how the election actually shook out. But if we zoom in a little bit on the numbers, Luxon had a massive lead when it comes to video views in particular. He also had a bit of a lead in interaction rate, which basically means how likely his content was to be clicked on. And that sort of became a theme for National overall.
Well, let's look at the parties. What was National's edge?
Well, again, it comes down to those video views. They were ahead on every metric that we measure, but video views in particular, they had about 1.6 million views, which was well over 5 times Labor's total. And it's a very smart play by them because basically every social media platform is pivoting hard into short-form video, responding to the rise of TikTok, which is just the dominant platform these days.
So National dominated there, but what about the minors? Where were they in all of this?
Yeah, we saw a pretty steep drop-off when it came to the minors. So if we look at something like New Zealand First, for example, they were really barely registering, and it kind of shows how they were really pivoting towards Winston Peters as a brand above the actual party page itself. The Greens had a fairly disappointing showing, which is disappointing for them considering they're a bit more of a youth-focused party. ACT actually lagged behind them in overall engagement, which is surprising considering how much money they spent during this election.
All right, well, let's talk about the money. Where was it being spent and, what do they get for it?
Well, yeah, so we saw about $2 million spent between Google and Meta during the election campaign. Nearly half of that came from the ACT party. Labor actually spent more than National overall by a hair, but again, National beat them both in terms of overall engagement, just through more cleverly targeted content and more carefully crafted content. To be fair, there is a bit of an edge for opposition online because explaining dense policy on social media is pretty hard. Attacking on social media is very easy.
Much easier. Is this what we're going to be dealing with in the future in terms of election cycles and election campaigns?
Look, I think moving forward, TikTok is very clearly going to be a bigger part of every party's strategy, unless it's banned, which, remember, is a live concern. There are security concerns. It is banned on parliamentary devices.
That's right, yeah.
But it's just clearly got so much utility. Now, it's hard to verify independently numbers on TikTok, but National's team is claiming around 17 million views on TikTok.
That sounds massive.
Which is absolutely enormous. I did check that with some third-party software, and it does roughly track, which just means TikTok is by far and away the most dominant platform, far outstripping Facebook.
Technology is moving on so quickly, though. So are we going to be just looking at TikTok elections, or what role will what will it look like in the next election campaign?
I think as we move through the next 3 years, artificial intelligence is going to increasingly become a live concern. Generative AI, basically the tools which can create video, which can create text, which can create images, are accelerating so quickly, we're very soon going to be able to create hyper-targeted, hyper-bespoke content at an absolute fraction in time and money. So it will basically just be inevitable that these tools will get used more. National did dip its toe in this water and then got a lot of backlash around their image generation. It may have given people cold feet, but I think by the time we get to 2026, these tools are going to be used, so it's going to ask some pretty serious questions about role AI should play in our democracy.
Yeah, and we saw, obviously, Labor rule out using any AI as a result of that, what you just mentioned about National. Look, we can't let you go until we always do a final honourable mention, and this is a final honourable mention for this term. What do you got?
Well, look, I think it's really important to finish just by shouting out the MPs who are losing their seats, losing their jobs, and already announced their retirement, who look to be heading to the door. I mean, elections are really tough on the MPs themselves, they're really tough on families, but they're also really tough on staff. So I think it was really good to see a lot of Labor MPs in their sort of farewell posts and in their lost posts, shouting out those staff who very rarely actually get recognised in public, but obviously are being shown the door too. Yeah. And my very final shout out would have to go to Andrew Little, probably the most high profile MP who has announced his retirement. The man who famously rebranded his social media accounts Daddy Thick Snack Little on a social media stunt. But he's that guy. He was the kind of politician that walked a really fine line between being a very serious politician who achieved a lot during his tenure, but obviously knew how to have fun on social media. So my job, at least, Simon, will be a little bit more boring without him.
Well, you never know who's coming in. They could provide plenty of content for you, Finn. Finn Hogan, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Alan.